I am an animal of this region, of this place. And I feel it. I feel it when I'm running outside.
Sometimes emotions that we feel, they're trying to tell us something. They're giving us some pointers in life.
All of us are feeling those things all the time. It's just the reality of life.
How did you develop? How did you come up with that routine? And how does it help you?
I fear that people will judge me. Let me then do the best that I can on this particular thing so I do not get judged or have the responses for when the judgment will come.
It changed something inside me. It just clicked. I'm like, okay, so I can do this.
Then shut up and do the work. If you stop for more than a week, now you have to work a month for you to get back to where you were a week ago.
It leads to a process of crystallization. So you become like a stone. You stop learning, you stop growing.
If there is no value, as in if the quality is not good, then obviously capitalism will not reward that and it will not grow.
Welcome to the Soulful Entrepreneur podcast. I'm your host, Lucy Stepanyan. Today's guest is Zareh Zurabyan. He's the head of eLabNext America and CEO and co-founder of Map Data Ventures. Welcome, Zareh.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Can I call you Z, by the way?
Yes, that's what everybody calls me. So actually, a quick story about that. Let me just jump right into it.
Please.
So when I moved to US, nobody could pronounce my name, right? So I said it's
Zareh.
Yeah, they call me Zareh, Zareh,
yeah.
And then my last name also starts with Z, right? So then people started calling me Mr. Z,
yeah.
ZZ, and then the professors were calling me ZZ Top. Then the math teachers were calling me Z squared.
Okay.
And then it just like naturally progressed to just Z. So that's been my nickname. Everybody knows me in the industry as Z, so that's perfectly fine.
Okay, so Z it is. Because
Yep.
I was thinking about how to address you, and then I heard somewhere you mentioned they call me Z.
Yeah.
I'm like, perfect, that's the best way to address you.
Absolutely.
So we're in Yerevan, and we're still filming it here. You come here very often, like throughout maybe once a year or twice a year.
Yep.
What is the reason you're here this time?
So yeah, I come every year. Sometimes I come multiple times a year. Last time I was here, I also climbed Mount Ararat, which was a very amazing feeling. Yeah, it was a emotional roller coaster and a physical one. It was great. But for the most part, I'm here for several reasons. I kind of mix business and pleasure together. This is my home. This is where I grew up. This is my everything. But at the same time, I'm very actively trying to build a bridge between Yerevan and Boston. So, and then that bridge hopefully is more towards biotech. That's kind of my specialty. That's where I'm at. But I'm constantly trying to create connections in the tech world between Yerevan and US in general, also in Europe. And that's because there is so much talent here in the tech space that do not get the same level of attention than, let's say, certain Eastern European countries or India and so on. So I'm basically just doing my part to create that. But I want to make it clear that when I try to build that bridge, it's not some kind of because I'm a very nice person and I'm trying to do that. It's purely business venture. So if there is value, then the blocks of the bridge will be created. If there is no value, as in if the quality is not good, then obviously capitalism will not reward that and it will not grow. So I basically just try to match the skill level and to the needs of the people that I know in the US in different sectors. And if it works, works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it's fun. It's fun doing that.
Yeah. So I think many years ago, this country was known as an outsourcing hub. Maybe not as well known as, let's say, India, as you mentioned, or other Eastern European countries, or like Ukraine. But it was known as an outsourcing hub. But now it's more moving towards product orientation. How do you view Armenia as, like you mentioned, that we have a lot of tech talent here? This talent, are you thinking about using it for outsourcing purposes, or what is your vision with that?
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. So right now, the truth is the truth. It's very underdeveloped. It's not product space is not developed at all. There's a lot of great ideas. There's a lot of great prototypes, But when it comes to actual implementation or market entry or anything like that, I don't know of any product from Armenia that has really made a difference on a global scale at the moment. There might be few, but
Very few.
yeah, but those are like individual stories. There isn't an ecosystem around it yet. The ecosystem that we currently have in Armenia is because of the mathematics that has been developed here for decades during Soviet Russia, and that's very, very strong. So we end up getting a lot of great developers and so on that precisely do that. They're perfect for outsourcing and so on, or they get headhunted by Microsoft and Google and all these places, and they quickly leave. And they go into the Silicon Valleys and so on. So as far as like physical products, there isn't an ecosystem here. As far as SaaS products, yeah, definitely there are kind of service-based software that are doing their rounds and they're doing very well. But as far as biotech goes, it's everybody is kind of scratching the surface right now, and then everybody's kind of trying to kind of elevate to that next level of notoriety in the space, and it's really fun kind of watching that process, because as soon as we have a couple of major success stories, then the rest will follow. And there are a couple that are kind of there already. Recently, Modicus Prime, that started from here, computer vision AI company. Just got 3.5 million in funding. They're out in Texas doing amazing work. They're in the Johnson & Johnson incubator space. And those are the success stories that will kind of have a ripple effect for people to have their eyes into this space as well. By space, I mean Armenia.
Yeah, but you don't see, as you said, we're just scratching the surface in terms of biotech, because I haven't heard of any either people or companies that would do well in that space. So what you're trying to is basically to create this ecosystem specifically for biotech, or you're just looking at the tech space? So
primarily I'm looking into biotech, and exactly that. I'm trying to create the first kind of connections now. That is my primary focus. That's my specialty. That's what I'm really good at. However, there's so much tech opportunities there as well, and there's definitely a vacuum to be filled as far as U.S. founders wanting high level of development, but not having the funds to kind of hire someone in the U.S. So they're trying to outsource and maybe even have extensions of their teams kind of built in other places. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities there as well.
Yeah, I think Estonia has grown from an outsourcing hub into basically product space, where you have tech products and not just that. So yeah, that might be a similar path for us. But I'm going to ask you a more of a challenging question in terms of when we look at the diaspora Armenians and anyone just who moves outside of Armenia, they have this sense of responsibility to help Armenia. But sometimes, and I'm not saying this about everyone, this could be vanity or some form of a way to show off that they have grown so much now that they can come here and they help the country itself. And I'm not saying that you're doing that, but a lot of diaspora Armenians might have this tendency. Have you felt that, or is this?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, look, my personal approach has changed over the years. Ever since I was 13 years old, I was doing fundraisers in U.S. For Armenia, different causes, whether it is planting trees with Armenia Tree Project, or sending money to Artsakh, to building some kind of a school, computer room or something like that. And that was just part of my identity. That was like, okay, if you are a good human being, you have to have an impact into your immediate community where you live, and also into another community that you feel a connection to. For somebody in US, it could be, I don't know, dolphins, and dolphins' lives matter, and this is what you focus on.
Right.
For other people, it's something else. For me, it was Armenia, because this is where I'm from, and when you know that there's so many issues here and so on, you actively try to help. And not to kind of, pat myself on the back, but millions of dollars have been raised through the efforts of myself, my brother, and the great community of people that have been part of the team that we've been working with. But what you realize very quickly, it's a bottomless pit.
Yeah.
The more money you throw in, the pit gets deeper, and it just keeps on going. And quite frankly, nothing really happens. They're all surface level kind of solutions. At least this is at this point in my life. This is how I feel. I could be wrong. Please, correct me if I'm wrong. But what you're noticing is there's a lot of surface level good things happening, but the core of the issue is not being fixed, right? So if, let's say, you're building a computer room in a particular school, couple of talented kids end up getting an opportunity to expand their skills, and they might become successful and so on. And so you do have that little micro impact. But as far as the educational system adopting this new way of doing things, that does not happen, right? So my mindset has shifted from kind of having micro impact to having a bit more macro and systematic impact within Armenia. And the only way that I could do that was to switch my mindset from fundraising related, helping and et cetera, to business oriented kind of assistance. Because now the person that I'm engaging with that's from here is very focused on that because they want to be successful as well, right? So it's not like, okay, give me money, let me do something. It's, okay, let's work together so it can be mutually beneficial. And then if that ends up having a ripple effect of people getting hired, people getting educated on how to work with the US and Europe and whatever, then you start building an infrastructure, you start building departments and so on. And that ends up having a much more kind of deeper impact on the society and overall quality of things. So ever since I've made that kind of distinction for myself, which started around 2018, 19, where I kind of made that shift, and even more so after what happened to Artsakh and during those times, there has been much more, I would say, impactful projects that have made a real difference, and I plan on kind of continuing on that path.
Yeah. So you switched your mindset from fundraising to sustainable businesses,
Right.
development of, let's say, an ecosystem, or creating a space for people to do business. Basically, that's what you're. Yeah. You yourself moved to the U.S. early on, right? How old were you?
13.
13.
I was a baby.
You were, and you still are. No, I'm just kidding.
That was 3 years ago.
That was 3 years ago. But why did you move to the US at such an early stage?
Yeah, so I mean, first it was my aunt that moved. She was an opera singer. She was traveling the world singing and so on. And
do we know her?
Nunek Arapetyan. I don't know. She hasn't been in the industry for some time now. And, she was the first one out of our family that moved there. Then it was my sister that moved there. Excuse me, she got her PhD in biomedical engineering. Then my brother, and then me, and then my parents. So the whole idea was go to Boston, get good education, and it was all for education. At the time I was a kid, I had no say as to where we're going. If they decided we're going to Zimbabwe, it would have been Zimbabwe. But then once you go and you first you go to middle school, then you go to high school, then you get into the college, and your life kind of develops there, and now you're kind of stuck between the two countries, and your heart is torn apart, where you want to move back, but now you're building your life and your career and your connections in a different country. And it's that constant battle of your heart wanting to be back here, where I'm from, where I love to be, but also realizing that the opportunities are really more in Boston and in US for anybody, any country, right? Everybody's trying to move to US and build their businesses. So luckily, now I'm able to kind of constantly go back and forth and kind of get that energy from the soil and from the water of Armenia, and bring that energy back and put it back into the work that I do in the US.
It's interesting. What do you like about Armenia? Because when I was 15, I was doing an exchange program for 1 year in the US, and it was super cool. I really enjoyed it. I had it was a breath of fresh air for me.
Right.
I think because back then it was 3 years ago, so no, just kidding. But I was also very judgmental society. At least that was the people that I was surrounded by. And then I had this a revelation. Oh, it's limitless life. I can do many things, anything I want to do. For you, it was like I was torn a bit more, right? So you loved it here. What is it that you love about Armenia?
At the time, or right now in general?
At the time, and then also right now.
Okay, at the time, it was more, it was a very selfish kind of thing. It was like, hey, all my friends are here, all my life is here in Armenia, and now I basically at the most forming years of your life, the adolescent years when you're kind of finding yourself, all of a sudden you're placed in a new environment where you're the only immigrant and people are making fun of your accent and
Oh.
you're kind of finding yourself in that space. You're learning English, you're figuring out new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
So it was just a very individual journey and individually looking. Those were the things that I was thinking about. This, okay, my friends and my life, and now I'm in a new country with all these new things, and so that was the kind of the difficult part. But as of right now, it's kind of when I look at this to what I love about Armenia. Let me answer it from like a philosophical kind of angle, and then we can kind of delve into it. Um, when you look at in animal kingdom, and different animals are in specific regions for a reason, right? They migrate to very specific regions. I think there is this genetic memory that is tied to these mountains and to this water and to this soil. I am an animal of this region, of this place,
Right.
and I feel it. I feel it when I'm running outside. I feel it when I'm, climbing a mountain. I feel it when I'm in one of the, old churches, because there's centuries of people passing down this information to one another and eating the food and breathing the air and drinking the water. And when I'm here, I fully feel myself. Whereas when I'm in US, I've found my friends, my tribe. I feel very much myself over there too. But there's always this one small missing link that's just not there. So I would say that's, philosophically speaking, I think that's what it is. But then, we can kind of go into the more, specifics and just say the bread.
The bread.
Yeah, the cheese,
Yeah.
the meat, the food, the fruits. I've been eating like a maniac. I've been eating, how you say tooth in English?
I have no idea.
Man, I forget. But anyways, I've just been pounding my face with fruits that we simply just that does not have any flavor in the US.
That's true. Apricots have no flavor in the US. That's for sure. Like
Yeah.
I never eat any apricots there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So,
Do you believe in karma?
no.
Okay, so there's this. I don't want to say anything uneducated because I also am not like an expert at this, but they say that karmically we are born in a place, in a location, let's say in a country where you're supposed to live there because you have to live through the challenges that this specific location presents and to breathe this specific air, and this helps you to grow, basically. So
It makes sense to me.
it does make sense to me
Maybe
too.
I do believe in karma and I don't know it.
Maybe you do. But yeah, that was something that I read, and I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, right? Because we are born with specific noses, in a specific location, with its specific challenges, where it's really hard to grow anything. In Armenia, for instance, you cross the border to Georgia, it's like greenish area, everything, like a lot of fruit, and it's easy to grow things. And here it's like mountainous area, but people live here, survive, and have been surviving for centuries. So that's an interesting
It makes sense. I mean, if you look at, I don't know, monkeys in a jungle, and you look at, I don't know, 20-mile difference, and those particular monkeys have a completely different look, feel, behavior. Yeah, it makes sense.
You have an Ivy League education, basically MIT, Harvard. What has Ivy League given you that otherwise you wouldn't be able to get?
Nothing.
No, what?
No, it's it's the names are much bigger than what it actually provides. The brand is just so strong that it feels like that just because you got an education there, you're all of a sudden, a bit above than others. As far as the quality of education that you got, but you can get the same level of education at the non-Ivy League school. The difference is the pool of talent that's around you is what's going to elevate you to do better. So the education itself is not that different because you're learning the same models of leadership, you're learning the same models of marketing, you know, especially if you're looking at, you know, top 100 universities, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at Harvard versus, let's say, Northeastern University or Boston University, the quality is not going to be that different, if any.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen is at Harvard or MIT, you're going to get highly talented people around you that motivate you, that give you a perspective that you wouldn't get somewhere else. And that's what pushes you to kind of elevate your mindset and draw inspiration from these people and get inspired to do something big and do something different. So I would say that's really the, you know, the difference between that.
Interesting. I would also say probably network. Well, you mentioned the people who motivate you, but also network in terms of after you graduate, you're able to reach out to so many people and just like ask for a favor or like do business with them, and it's much easier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I would say, you know, MIT definitely has much more skillful people, and Harvard has much more kind of strategic people with a bigger network. So, you know, if you're looking to be a tech founder, it's better to go to MIT. If you're looking to just be an overall kind of a founder of some sort of a business person, then Harvard would be better.
No, I agree. I studied at Duke, and my professor, Intermit Gill, he's amazing. He's now the senior vice president of the World Bank Group. And what pulled me at the end of like we were studying and I was graduating, it was super hard because of the COVID hit and stuff like that. He believed in people. He saw people uniquely and he saw certain potential in everyone. And so he would draw this potential out of you. Like he would really sit down with you and talk to you, and you would think he wouldn't have time for it, but he did. He talked to you, he explained to you like how things work here because I was an international student, and he believed in me. And just the fact that this type of person who is so educated and successful and he sees something in me, it changed something inside me. It just clicked. I'm like, okay, so I can do this.
Yeah, so much depends on that person, you know, a teacher or a coach or somebody who is in the industry and has been around and has the, you know, has the accolades to. Sometimes all they have to do is not even spend all that time to work with you, which is amazing. And I think, you know, younger people should always seek mentors. I think the culture of mentorship has kind of died down these days. And, you know, I myself, I seek mentors to kind of just gain as much information as possible so I can just be a better version of myself. But so much depends on just somebody just even saying just one word to you of, hey, you got this or something. And it can just be very different. You know, in high school, I hated chemistry because my chemistry teacher was really bad. And then I thought I'm never going to go into science because of that.
Right.
Then in college, my chemistry teacher was amazing. And she's the reason why I kind of just shifted my mindset and decided to get into science. So it's like both kind of extremes of the spectrum. And, you know, you know, what would my life be now if I didn't take that route, if that teacher was not good? I don't know. You know, where would you be if that person didn't, you know, believe in you and kind of giving you that? It's amazing how our lives work out just from having those kinds of people in our lives that just believe in us, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why when they ask me, why do you think it's a good idea to study in a top 10 school, I always say because you meet the right people there. And this right people, if you create real connection with them, it's life-changing. Like it changes your whole perspective on yourself, on life, and you think that you can do it. Otherwise, like people you meet sometimes are pulling you down versus bringing you up. And obviously, at some point, you need to grow some balls. I'm going to say that, but and be your own person and motivate other people and become mentors for them. But until like 35, 36, I think people are developing.
You don't have that. You know, some people, of course, like intrinsically just have that in them to kind of do that from a young age, but you kind of grow up in your life just assuming that you are at service of the world and you just do things, and older people have their shit together and they're doing everything right and they will show you the way and so on. So you're kind of always waiting for something to happen, for you to do something, until, like you said, it clicks and you realize, no, 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 I am the one that's deciding how this thing is going to move forward. And you know, hopefully that happens during your college years when professors like yours are there to kind of help you to understand that and put you on a more kind of independent path forward.
Yeah, exactly. So if I want to be a founder, I want to be a CEO of a company, would you say it makes sense for me to get a master's in management or an MBA from Harvard or a top school? Or is it you can do it without it as well?
You can do it without it. You know, a lot of it is common sense. I know a lot of people with MBAs and PhDs that have no idea what they're doing.
I know.
And you know, but of course, education does something much bigger than very specific skills, which is it teaches you how to learn. And I think that's very important. If you keep a curious mind, this is what helps you to constantly evolve, because everything is changing, right? The management requirements are changing, management skills are changing, people's behavior are changing, right? Right now there's a gap between people who know how to use technology and people who don't, and there's this shift that's happening, and you have to accept that and be curious to kind of understand what's going on, so then you can evolve along with it and be able to apply those things to in your, you know, management of people and strategy of your product and so on. So in short, it's definitely possible without the education, but education provides a lot more, including you know, like I said, the way of thinking, but also the connections and so on, and then very specific models that you can take from those classes and apply into your work. So for example, I recently took a leadership course at MIT. It's called Finding Your Leadership Signature.
Right.
You know, every person has their own signature and style of leading. And over there, I learned the MIT's 4 CAPS model, which essentially talks about leadership where you know, you have the mover who kind of like creates the ideas for a business. You have the opposer who is kind of opposing it and trying to find better solutions. You have the follower who is trying to build context around it and be able to push that particular project forward. And then you have the bystander that kind of sits back, listens, and understands all of these things and tries to provide a good path forward. So ideally, a leader, let's say a founder, has all of these 4 attributes and is able to do that. But in many cases, we lean towards one over the others just because of our upbringing, our personalities, and so on. So it's important to kind of surround yourself with people that have these attributes, and you know that you are engaging in this kind of a discussion for you to be able to, you start with a project, and by the end of this discussion, now you have a much better project that you want to do.
Yeah.
So I would say, of course, it's important. And then especially when you look at folks that are technical founders, which is very common, they might be very introverted. They might be highly skillful in their particular things, but they don't know anything about organizational behavior. They don't know much about humans and how to manage humans and personalities and so on. So, you know, you can go and take these classes and get an education that will help you to fill that gap that you currently do not have because you've been so hyper-focused on learning how to code or learning how to build that product.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of benefit in education.
Let me guess, you're a mover. You gravitate toward being a mover. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. But I also know how to play my part in different situations. So I'm always happy to be the number 2, the number 3, or the number 4 for the greater good of the project or for the business. I think that's very important. I know that, okay, right now I'm going to play devil's advocate on this thing and I'm going to come up with all the reasons why we shouldn't do this, right?
Okay.
In other cases, I say, hey, maybe I agree, maybe I disagree. It does not matter right now because this is a different kind of project that I might not have the skills or understanding. You know what? If you need my support, I'm going to be a follower and I'm going to support you in this process. And I think that's very important to kind of know how to navigate that because especially with founders from Armenia in particular. Everyone wants to be a mover.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that their idea is the best, and there's an overall kind of and I don't think it's willful, but it's just there where people just simply block off anything that comes their way that goes against their general ideas. And you have to have a lot of discussion for them to be able to tear through that initial wall of kind of closing off to them to start seeing all of these other things. And I don't think this is a primarily an Armenian thing. I think it's just like a small country, small market kind of thing, because they think only in this little area, and they're not seeing kind of the bigger picture and the U.S. market and the European market and how. And I mean, even from Europe, to be honest with you, I mean, a lot of European countries have founders have similar problems because they're thinking about just the EU, just the UK, just their country. And that forces you to kind of look small rather than big and be able to adapt your leading skills in those things.
Yeah, like
does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, expanding the horizons. But I also think it's also about the ego.
Yeah, I think that definitely plays a part. I also think a lot of folks are trying to do better. People are very, very driven in Armenia, extremely driven.
That is true.
And that can force you to kind of put blinders on and only focus on what you're trying to do. So ego might be an element of that, or we can attest that to being egotistical. But it could be that you are so much in this rat race, you're so much in this kind of hamster wheel that you're only focusing on success, and maybe up until this point that's what got you to that point, by saying no to everybody and just only focusing on yourself. And now you've created that particular thing that now the tunnel vision of your success has become the walls that creates of that tunnel vision. So you're not being able to take in anything else from the side because, well, I've already created a company, I already did this, I did it myself, and so on. And you kind of fall into this trap of only focusing on what you think, what needs to be done. I think we as Armenians, we always like to psychoanalyze our nation, where we say,
what we're doing right now.
Yeah, it's like, there's a reason why we have good boxers and good wrestlers and whatever, and we do not have good football team or basketball team or whatever, because we don't know how to play in a team. We're very individual and so on. According to who? Like, who decided that's what's happening? We just, there's these stories, this myth that circle around our kind of conversations, and we kind of say those things. But I think a lot of it is, if you kind of like strip it down to like economical reasons, you will see why we act a certain way versus the other. Why certain things are much, wrestling requires much less funding than a basketball team, than a football team, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think, a lot of the problems in Armenia, in the tech world and so on, everything just comes down to money, to economy. And when it's not there, these little subcultures of behavior kind of start developing to offset that. And that's what's kind of causing some of the friction that we were just talking about.
That's super interesting. I never thought of it from an economical perspective. My idea was more this, the general thing, like, we are individual nation. We like to be individuals. But I think it's more than that. I think it's many variables that affected that.
Of course, yeah.
And not just one. And now we see this picture and we try to go back and try to analyze what it was.
Right.
But I think one thing that, as you were talking, I was thinking about growth mindset. Let's say when a person doesn't continue growing and learning, and they just have this blinders on and they're focusing on one thing only, and they think they know better and they don't need to learn anything else, it leads to a process of crystallization. So you become like a stone. You stop learning, you stop growing, you're not flexible anymore.
Right.
in your case, you have been, since I started watching you, let's say following you on social media and then seeing your LinkedIn page, I've seen you already done like a couple of certificate programs and then speaking here and there and then taking this lecture, taking that lecture. What drives you to learn continuously? What is this driver?
Yeah, so maybe I can answer this from again like a philosophical perspective first, and then I'll
We
tell
love
you.
philosophical perspectives. Go ahead.
So so I do Muay Thai kickboxing. I fight,
Right.
and when you fight, there's this interesting kind of period of adjustment. You start feeling very weak when you start training. So I remember when I first started training, I don't even remember how old I was, but you feel very weak because you go in and you realize how skillful all these people are and how good they are, and they're kicking your butt, right? You're getting punched in the face, you're getting kicked, you're going home and you're sore and whatever, and it's very humbling. And it forces you to kind of look within and understand your place in a world of in the animal kingdom, right? You're just like, okay, I know where I belong because there's all these people, younger, older, doesn't matter, they can kick my butt. And then at the 6-month mark, when you start developing some skills, you're like, I got this, now I'm the one that can kick other people's butts, the new people that are coming in, and you get this interesting kind of confidence boost that comes. And until you start training with people that are a bit more advanced, and then you get humbled again. And in that first kind of 6 to 8 month period, every single martial artist kind of goes through this process where they calibrate and then they realize, oh, there's levels to this shit forever. Like this does not stop. There's always better than better. And because in martial arts, it's just like a matter of life and death, like right away. It's so palpable, you feel it so much that there is no way of escaping it, right? Whereas when it comes to mental calibration, you can create psychological walls around you as to why you are so good and why you are the man or the woman, why, I had all these successes, so you should listen to me, and et cetera, et cetera. And we cherry pick all of these kind of success stories to build our name and our brand and whatever, so then we can climb the hierarchy and the social status, right? We see this all the time. People do it all the time. I'm sure people can think of those people as I'm talking about it, whether it's their boss or their colleague or so on. And in fighting, you can't do that. You can't cherry pick all the weak people to
like amplify the
right.
successes and
Exactly. You
downgrade
can't
the
do that. It's
failures.
just good versus bad. It's just pure. It's so pure. And when I kind of experienced that, I kind of took that with me as an underlying kind of theme to my life. And you realize that you can do that emotionally, you can do that psychologically, you can do that intellectually. There's levels to this, and it's a never-ending journey of constantly trying to get better and read the books and take the classes and so on. So that's my philosophy on life. I think we kind of go through these stages of kind of a lot of learning and developing. Then you hit a plateau where you're able to apply those new learnings into your life until you hit another kind of tipping point, and then you kind of go again into and I think it's important for founders and so on to constantly do that, is to every couple of years to take a class in something so you can kind of develop. So that's the philosophical kind of answer.
Yeah.
But in reality, there's also AI that's completely disrupting the space, right? Everything is changing all the time. New technologies that are coming out all the time. New models of people management. New models of how you would, manage a coding team. How you would manage a marketing team. Google Analytics is changing, LinkedIn ads are changing, Meta is changing all the time. They're changing their algorithms and so on. So you have to constantly learn so you can adapt to this evolving world that we're in. So you either, what's that saying, innovate or die?
Yep.
You need to innovate yourself or you will die yourself. You will kind of stagnate and just stay in the same level. So at this point, for me, it's not very, I don't even think about it. It's just part of my life is just to constantly try to to do better and do that by taking classes or whatever it is for me to keep on evolving as a human being.
But does that, as you were speaking, I was thinking about myself. I also try to do that, like stay on top of things and like learn new skills every now and then, try to push myself out of the comfort zone. But I also think about this as like an anxiety provoking thing. If you think about it, you could look at it as if like I'm in this race against millions and billions of other people who are doing better than you are, and that things are changing constantly. So you have to like catch up and compete and run towards something. How do you approach this mindset in a way that doesn't cause you anxiety?
I think life is nobody has kind of the blueprint to life. Everybody chooses the kind of things that they want to engage with, the things that they want to invest in. Some people choose to go live in New Hampshire in the mountains and do a job that does not require all these leadership classes at MIT and so on. And it could be argued that they are much happier and they live much more fulfilling lives than, let's say, those of us that are in the Silicon Valleys and the Bostons and all these places. It's just a matter of what you choose to kind of go into. And if you've chosen this life, then shut up and do the work. And there is no time to discuss about all these anxieties and all these problems and so on. Go exercise, go do some yoga, do some work, and just work around. I'm not saying
That's
like
a very stoic approach.
Sure, but why is it that we have to kind of look and kind of divide every single emotion into sets of emotions and talk about all of these things and look within and go into a therapist every single day and talk about all these problems which exacerbates that same problem and you ruminate. This is a psychological term of rumination where a lot of these therapists are actually making money off of your rumination, right? So you create the problem out of a problem that shouldn't be there in the first place if you've chosen this life. If you've chosen it, then educate yourself, create the kind of ecosystem and the support system around you so you can kind of manage that. That's how I'm looking at it. Me personally, I'm not judging anybody that doesn't do that. All I'm saying is that once I have chosen this life, I cannot afford anxiety and I do not welcome anxiety. When I feel anxiety coming in, I just go hit the bag, I run, and within 15, 20 minutes of endorphins entering my brain and into my body, I'm able to very quickly kind of get over whatever. I figure it out and I just move on. That's just me.
No, I think that's one way to approach this situation, and I agree. Like a lot of rumination and talking about like this person looked at me this way, and then this is how I felt. Why did I feel this way? And then like that's stupid a little bit. But again, no judgment. But I feel like it can take some of your energy instead of being constructive. It can be destructive.
It's real. I mean, it would be irresponsible of us not to accept that this happens to the most high functioning people, right? And we all have our tipping point and you kind of just take on projects. If you're a high functioning person who's always doing things and so on, and it's part of your identity and people always look at you to give advice within the organization and show the way and so on, it takes a lot of things that you're adding on that you might not even realize that it's happening, right? And especially when people's lives matter, their jobs, right? You have to fire someone that is going through a divorce at the same time. You have to get rid of someone that has a sick child at home, or all of these things are extremely difficult things to do. But it comes with the territory, and you have to prepare yourself for those kinds of things and lead with empathy and lead with understanding, and just kind of prepare yourself for that. And I think that's the reason why a lot of these young founders do not have that experience to kind of do that. And if they're having a big boom and they're getting a lot of funding, now they're hiring 200, 300 people, then they have all that anxiety because they don't know how to deal with all of that.
Yeah.
You know, and people are getting promoted when they shouldn't be promoted, and they very quickly are starting to do that. Whereas if you're, you know, 50, 60 years old, maybe you do not have, you know, AI skills or something like that, but you have people skills maybe, and you know how you've lived through scale ups and layoffs and you know, all these, you know, very difficult things, and you know how to deal with it, then you can kind of give that kind of insight on how to deal with these things. um, and 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 I mean, not to say that, you know, young people can do that and older people can do AI. That's not about that. It's just that there's so much complexity in all of this. All I'm saying is that once you make the commitment, you have to accept that you're engaging with a set of new rules and responsibilities, and you have to arm yourself with the skills to deal with it and actively work on it.
Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent in terms of like when there's anxiety present. My way of dealing with it is basically I try to get to the bottom of it. Like, why do I feel anxious? And then try to understand what is it that puts me into the state, because sometimes emotions that we feel, they're trying to tell us something. They're giving us some pointers in life, and they're helping us to figure out what we can do better to manage ourselves. Because I have I definitely struggle with anxiety. I suffer from it a lot, especially when it comes to, let's say, doing something that I'm not completely comfortable with, or I don't have the necessary skills to do, but I always push myself to do it. And then post factum, I just sit down and I think, okay, I had this anxiety. Was it rational? It was not. Then I just like work with it and I try to make it pass at a certain point.
That's exactly what I just said, though, right? It's
Okay.
like you just accept it and
Yeah.
deal with it. I
Yeah.
just didn't go into the details of how to deal with it, but
Right.
that's exactly what you do, right? You're just like, okay, I feel a certain way. I have fear of failing.
Yeah.
I have fear of, you know, maybe inferiority complex on this
Yeah.
particular topic. Maybe I have, what is that thing
Fear,
called?
judgment.
Yeah, judgment. What is that? Imposter syndrome on
Yeah.
a, you know, on this particular, all of us have it, and all of us are feeling those things all the time. It's just the reality of life. And that's what I meant in fighting. It's so raw, it's so real, because you go into the ring
Yeah.
and you're like, I can die right now. You don't feel that when you're you know, in the boardroom. You don't feel that in whatever, but those fears are there underneath. So as long as you just accept that all of us have that,
Yeah.
all of us are going through that, we're all figuring this shit out, you know, as we go, then it just becomes a bit easier to deal with it. And then you're like, okay, I don't have those skills. Let me go ahead and read up on it.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, I'm not, you know, I fear that people will judge me. Let me then do the best that I can on this particular thing so I do not get judged, or have the responses for when the judgment will come, or, you know, whatever it is. And that's what I mean. So you're doing exactly what I think a lot of us are doing. It's just that I think deciding to focus on the anxiety for a long period of time and ruminate in it, I think this is where things kind of become a bit difficult. And I think at this new kind of this hyper sensitive time that we're living in, it is almost like a badge of honor to have anxiety. It's like a badge of honor to kind of always talk about how stressed you are and how difficult everything is, and so on.
People don't understand you, and
Right,
yeah,
right, and I think that's not very healthy for progress in any institution, in any organization.
yeah, it's almost like I can't come to work today because I have, anxiety on daily basis, and I understand sometimes it can be debilitating. Like I've experienced that myself. Debilitating anxiety is a thing, but then using that as a way to victimize yourself is not healthy, which I see a tendency of. Probably younger generations are more prone to that. But there are also reasons for that, I guess. Like
Of course, and I mean, you know, certain countries kind of welcome that, and other countries don't, right? And in some places you have burnout as an actual kind of medical term.
Yeah.
And they basically enable you to just, now you're tired of working, you're like, I have burnout, I'm sick, I can't do this anymore. You get 2 years off.
Yeah.
And you get, you know, partial pay. in US, you can, in most places, you can fire people over no reason. Like you can actually just go ahead and say, okay, it's not working out.
Yeah.
So people are not as enabled to kind of go into that
Relax.
place. Yeah. So because that's a different level of anxiety where you feel expendable. You can kind of you can get switched around. So, but that also creates this, well, I better do a good job or else somebody else is going to come take my place because it's highly competitive.
Capitalism.
Yeah. So, there's all these different kind of methodologies when it comes to managing all of that. I think, all of those are welcome. I think all of those need to be discussed. All of these things need to be kind of talked about. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a framework that it stays within. And then once that you kind of get to that point, you stop and then you're like, okay, figured it out. Let's get back to work. Let's not, spend hours and days and weeks, looking into those things.
I want to talk about your insane routine. I've been following you on social media for what, like 2 months,
Yeah.
probably, maybe more than that. And every time I watch your social media feed, I'm like, shit, he's doing exactly what I planned to do, but I always like get some of the things like out. I leave some of the things out.
Yeah.
Tell me about a routine that works for you. How did you develop? How did you come up with that routine? And how does it help you?
Yeah. So my workout routine changes from, maybe every quarter. It kind of changes. Also time of the year, winter time, I'll do more yoga.
Right.
Summertime, I'll do more running, just to get some more sun and be outside. And I think it all started from a very young age because my father used to, force me to get up real early and go for a walk.
Nice.
Just go for a walk.
That was in Armenia,
Yeah,
even?
in Armenia, if you're studying, you come to a block where you're not being able to intake more information.
Yeah.
20 push-ups, this and that, um, and and it wasn't like forced. It was just kind of like, hey, trust me.
It helps.
This helps. Just trust me. Just go with it. And I did. I've kind of took that on, and I've always, I played basketball when I was here in Armenia. I did swimming, and then you're outside, you kind of always play and stuff like that. So I was always physically kind of active.
Yep.
And then in high school and then in college, you play sports, and the gym culture is strong in the U.S., especially in Boston, very, very strong. And I kind of like fell into that and realized, okay, then this is the way to do it. And then when I started fighting, then this is where I've realized that, okay, there's, of course, as we talked about, there's levels to it, etc. But then also, if you stop for more than a week, now you have to work a month for you to get back to where you were a week ago.
Right.
And the older you get, the more important that becomes, because when you're in your 40s and your 50s, you take a week off, it's not going to take you 3 months to get back to where you were. So, the life hack here is don't stop. You just got to keep on going. So my routine. So my typical routine right now, not in Armenia, but in the US, is 8 rounds of rope, 2 minutes.
And what time do you wake up?
Okay, so we're going to that level. Depends. I would say anywhere from 7 to 8. I don't work out in the morning right now. I've gone through a period where I was working out in the morning, but I'm more of a night workout person because I want to shake off everything from the day and go to sleep with a peace, in peace.
I like that.
So yeah, I wake up, 7 or 8. I start answering questions from Europe, right away. Then it's mostly East Coast kind of management, and then I would work till, I would say, 8 p.m. and then I'm answering kind of the West Coast kind of stuff that's happening. And then from 8 to 12, it's kind of me time, which is, dinner, lunch, friends, whatever it would be. So so whatever I do for my workout routine, I would say I do 8 rounds of rope. I do 8 rounds of shadow boxing to get the juices flowing.
Yep.
And then it's the fight training. It would be anywhere from 8 to 12 rounds, whether it's hitting the bag or sparring with someone or doing, specific kind of drills. And then I go into the weightlifting, but I do not go high weight. I do high reps, low weight, at this
Why is
point in
that?
my life. So, you do bigger weights when you're trying to gain muscle and you're trying to kind of grow
Yeah.
the muscles. I have no interest in growing my muscles. I've kind of grown into my body. This is, I've been the same kind of weight more or less my whole life. So right now it's all about oiling up the machine, right?
Yeah.
So my body is my machine, and now I'm just trying to maintain it and develop specific skills within it for different things. So if I know I'm going to be going on a trail run in New Hampshire and I'm going to run, then leading up to that, I'll do a lot of resistant band training on my knees, on my calves, and things like that. If I know I'm going to do some kind of, I have a crazy Siberian friend who we do a lot of like physical challenges. If I know we're about to go on a bike ride for 30 miles and then run for 5 miles and then swim for 2 miles or something like that, then I'll do different kinds of exercises. So I really focus on what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Looks don't matter to me at all. I think that's an unhealthy reason for you to work out, to lose 5 pounds here, and then the focus is different. It should be, what are you trying to accomplish? And it could be just to feel good.
Yeah.
That's enough to develop a very good routine. And then I've also recently realized that if you are doing a workout that resembles something that our ancestors did for a long period of time, and when I say ancestors, I mean even like 50 years ago,
Yeah,
when there wasn't
cave
everything
people.
automated. Yeah, not even cave people, like even just 50 years ago. Just think,
50 years. Okay.
yeah, like imagine what people did when they were living in villages, right? That you always carried things around,
Right.
you always pushed things, you always pulled things. None of these, isolation workouts are real. Like you just sit there and bench press, you sit there and do, bicep curls and all of that. It has no real functioning reason. It just looks. So I try to do a lot of pushing the sled and put a lot of weight on that. I try to do a lot of jumps. I try to do a lot of pulls, things that humans did for a very long period of time. And I've noticed that in the end, I feel much more satisfied. There's like this tap into, your animal kind of side of things. I feel like this is kind of some kind of a theme that's happening here.
It is animal theme.
Now we're just, I'm realizing it's happening.
It started off with Sergey calling you shark. Let's
Yeah,
put it that way.
right. So yeah, those are my routines, and those are the things that I focus on when it comes to working out.
And you think workout helps you to do better at your work?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a necessity. I feel like. I mean, again, on a scientific level, it's very clear that it's very helpful for you. You release all the toxins. Release all kinds of proteins that help you deal with stress. You release endorphins, adrenaline if you're fighting. All of these things, besides just making you feel alive and doing what you're supposed to be doing as a mammal. On top of all of that, you're also just kind of, as you're releasing all of these things, that just as a baseline, you feel good. But then there's also the psychological component of it where you accomplish something. And that accomplishment gives you confidence to then also apply that into the tasks of your work and everything that you do. So if you're, accomplishment oriented, then you just divide those things into small little tasks and you just kind of go after it, just like you would with the little exercises that you do.
Do you keep like a to-do list? Like and then tick it off?
In the gym?
Just in general in your life?
In general, yeah. My phone has like a full, different category of lists, work-related, personal, life goals, workout, or like physical kind of things that I want to accomplish, personal records on a particular, mile run, or, and I set all of these things up so then I can constantly think about those things, and little by little I check them off.
And
but
how
in the
many
gym,
percent of the things do you get to throughout the day? Like when you look at your to-do list?
Almost all.
Almost all? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I do like 60% of things.
Yeah, no, I mean, I make it realistic.
Okay.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe like I kind of, in my mind, I kind of know what I'm gonna be doing, and then that's what I end up putting, so I don't
Right.
forget, rather than just like a big official list of like every single thing that I want to do. Maybe that's why.
Maybe, yeah, that's a possibility, but it also gives you a sense of accomplishment when you put something and then you get to through your entire list. It makes you feel good about yourself and you've accomplished what you yourself have set for
Right,
yourself, and it's like an empowering thing that you do.
right.
I want to ask, I know we're out of time, but I want to ask a couple last questions.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
in terms of the social media, I've seen you like put up some of the workouts that you do, like some of your lifestyle, like the food and everything. Are you trying to build a personal brand on social media?
When I was younger, I was, because social media was kind of new, and it
Yeah.
was like, oh, this is, another pathway towards, I don't know, just building a brand that you can then leverage for,
Yeah.
different things. But, after a while, I realized that it's, I don't have really that personality for me to kind of like constantly live around building that persona, because it's like a full-time job. You kind of have to constantly kind of live your life around it. And, you also notice that, you see those people in restaurants that are not even eating and then just taking pictures of everything. They're not enjoying the particular view. And I realized that I'm starting to kind of do that a little bit when I was
Yeah.
younger, and I did not like that at all. It didn't feel good in the inside.
Right.
So I kind of just stopped trying all of that. And what I do now is essentially I just show my life as to how I live it. And, I've developed really good relationships and connections because of that, all around the world. I
Yeah,
mean, we got
that's
connected,
exactly.
through that, and
Exactly.
it's amazing. It's such a powerful tool because of that. I went to Netherlands and several years back, and I posted and asked the question like, "Hey, do I know anybody in Netherlands?" And people knew me and connected me to whoever. Now I'm really good friends with these people. I see them every time I go. I connected them to somebody else in Boston. They started doing business together, and this amazing relationship kind of formed just because of social media and just not being afraid to kind of connect with one another and post, a few things about your life and so on. So, so in short, yeah, I'm not trying to build a brand, but there are certain things that are work related that I put out there, and it's one to show kind of what I'm doing. But of course, underneath it, there is also an understanding that there are certain people that are interested in those things,
Right.
and they would reach out if there is some kind of an alignment that we can have, and I will gladly talk to them. So in that sense, there is a bit of kind of that brand building that's happening, but it's not something that I'm like putting a lot of
A lot of
effort
effort
in and
into.
time in. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've tried to start to really build a personal brand on social media for various reasons because it's so powerful. But then I felt like something inauthentic. I just can't just like, hi guys, today I'm gonna. I just can't do that. Like, man, like I need to find my own voice on social
Yes,
media
that's
probably,
key.
and I'm looking for it still. It's super hard to be authentic for me too on social
Yeah,
media. I
yeah,
feel.
and I feel like social media has kind of changed a little bit, where there's like different sectors of social media, right?
Right,
Like there's the travel influencers, the food influencers,
right,
and each one of those are doing their own thing.
yeah,
And then you kind of like think about when they create those very well made reels. It's like, can you imagine how many times they actually did those takes, and how many times they had to act like they're really excited about this croissant, and then
right,
they're like, no, 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 cut that, try again.
yeah,
And then they're doing that, but that just means that they're not, it's no long it's different than what we originally thought that social media is now.
yeah,
Is just a media outlet, just like you would hire a TV company to do commercials. Now you're doing that internally,
yeah.
and you're developing your acting skills, and that's what it is. So that's why I think podcasting is such a strong medium, because you don't have to do any of that. You can just be yourself and have a
Yeah.
good time,
Yeah.
which is what you're doing.
Exactly.
And that's the most authentic way that you can be. And Andrew Huberman is not doing that, right? He's not
Yeah.
doing, hey guys,
Yeah,
he's
I
not doing
know.
that. He's a professor. He's talking
Yeah.
about the things that he likes, and it just picked up and it became what it is today. And I think that's a great way to build a brand.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. Okay, I want to ask you about what's next for you. You're obviously already have accomplished a lot, and actually you've become the head of eLabNext Americas by accident, right? Because someone went on vacation, and you took the initiative to.
Oh, this wasn't at 11. This was the previous
Oh, that
job.
was a
This
previous
was the
job.
previous job.
But
So
you switched from being a researcher
yes, that's
to lab
happened by
manager.
accident.
Okay.
Yes, that's what happened. So yeah, so I was doing research at a company. I was working with anaerobic bacteria in the biofuels and bioenergy sector. And I had experience of managing labs before because I was the manager of the science building at Regis College, my undergrad. So I had those skills. So as I was doing research and I was working with a lot of bioreactors, I was managing about 67 different bioreactors at 3 mil, 5 mil, 10 mil, kind of this scale up, and then we would scale them to 50 mil, to 500 gallons, to 1,000 gallons, which was an amazing experience of kind of seeing these productions going from small little ideas all the way to full productions. It was great. And 3 months into the job, the lab manager leaves, and there's like 100 scientists. So it's
This
a
was
pretty
your
big
first
company.
job
This was my
in
first
biotech.
job out of college.
Nice.
And so they're like, oh, we need to hire someone, and they're not being able to find someone. And here I am, this young kid, ambitious, young, and like, hey, I'll do it. They said, okay, let's let this kid have fun until, to at least make sure things are being ordered and things are being done right.
Yeah.
Before we hire an actual,
Manager.
lab manager. Yeah. So I took that on and I fell in love with it right away because I was dealing with vendors. I was developing relationships with people. I was saving the company millions of dollars. And I got placed on a project that was 1 million a week was being spent on this project, and I was able to cut it down to like 700,000 and still have the same kind of results. And I could tell that I'm good at this. Like I get it. I understand it, and I realized that with the research in particular, you kind of have to be more introverted. You don't have to, of course, but the kind of personalities that were around me were introverted, and they enjoyed kind of just being in their own space and working and doing things. Whereas for me, I realized that as I switched my mindset from doing the research to doing this business stuff, I felt way more energized. I felt way happier. I noticed that I'm shifting and something is happening. And that was the point where I said, okay.
You found your thing.
Yeah, and this is when I decided to switch from doing research to more business oriented, and this is when my journey started in taking business classes and all of that for me to build the accolades to be able to shift over, because I didn't want to make an impulsive kind of shift. I wanted to first kind of take some classes, understand how I feel, how I understand things, and is this mine or not? And as these things started to click, then I made that transition into the business world.
That's amazing. I think what it took initiative to, I can do this. I'm straight out of college. I don't give a shit. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to see.
People were against it, and by people, I mean like, family, they want the best for you.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you sure? Be careful.
Fail,
yeah, I mean, they didn't say you're going to fail, but they were just like, what happens if you don't like it? All this time and it's very natural for a parent to think of the best case scenario for you. But at the same time, as they were trying to question my decision, that helped me to make a much stronger case as to what I'm trying to do, because they made me think of all the ways that they could go wrong, right?
Nice.
And after several months of discussions and all of that, it was just like, hey, it's your life, do what you think is best, and we got you. And there was a period that it was difficult, right? Of course, I took a pay cut during that time when I just had bought a house, and like so I went on several months of just drinking protein shakes, and I didn't want anybody to know that things are a bit difficult right now. But I believed that this is the right path forward, and I kind of went through that, and here we are.
What's next for Z?
Oh man, have some good bread and some good cheese later. That's definitely next. That's what I
That's
missed the
while you're
most.
in Yerevan.
Yeah, I missed. Oh my God, I missed it so much. But yeah, so right now there's several things that's happening. So I co-founded a consulting firm called Map Data Ventures. It's consulting slash investing. So in some cases we consult. In other cases, if we're very passionate about the product, then we might invest as well on top of consulting. And this is specifically for biotech SaaS companies, and specifically kind of pre-seed, very early stage in defining their go-to-market strategy in order to get your first, 3 customers. That's my specialty. That's what I'm really good at. I know how to package a product and internal kind of team in order for you to be able to land your first couple of clients, build that credibility, build those case studies and so on in order for you to then expand and scale up. So this is going to be one of those things that I'll be focusing on in the coming years. And then as far as with the current company, with eLabNext, we are expanding. We're hiring a lot of people. And of course, the current biotech industry is kind of shaky. Things are kind of going up and down. And I would be very interested to see what the election is going to do, the kind of VC money that's going to go out there, the government money, right? I work with several big government agencies. And when you're speaking with them, they're just like, we don't know if we're going to have the funding or not. And so, as that kind of dust settles after November, I think we'll see the kind of specific directions and specific decisions that we'll be making and which direction we're going to go within the industry.
Amazing.
So those would be the things that are, I guess, next that I'm focusing on.
I'm looking forward to seeing you achieve even greater heights, because it seems like you are on the right path and you've found yourself, your passion, your thing, your mojo, whatever people call it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. This was great. I had a great time talking to you.
Same here. Thank you so much. I think it was one of the most honest conversations I had so far. Also super interesting. I'm gonna go try martial arts, I guess.
Yeah, good. I'll train. If you come to Boston, we'll go to one of my gyms. We'll train there.
Amazing. I love that idea.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care.